Morning.
Ben, can you please mute everybody? And can you also make me co-host? Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Claire. And welcome everyone to this second and final closing ceremony for this iteration of Now What? And Ben and I have had a rich collaboration bouncing off of my original inability to turn away from the violence and pain happening in the Middle East and feeling a need to address that. And Ben pointing to the celebratory aspect of this closing and how those two weave together. So since we had that conversation, that whole topic has really deepened for me profoundly, actually, in alignment with all my other avenues of activism and expression. And what stands out for me as a Jewish woman raised in a primarily Orthodox Jewish home, it was difficult for it to be purely Orthodox due to the financial strains on the family, but largely Orthodox, but at the same time, incredibly violent. And the experience of how that violence was ignored by the world around me, including the members of my family and my extended family and my community, and how that has seared its message that I cannot turn away from loss, violence, particularly when children are being violated. And having much to celebrate, including my experiences in Now What? How is that humanistically and as the responsibility of humanity in a time of accelerating violence underscored by racism, how do we weave that together? So that's what I bring forth. And please, Ben, tell me your commentary.
I think the conclusion we both came to is that we have to learn how to weave these things together, that we need our capacity to celebrate, to feel joy, to experience pleasure and connection and love, and to do it in a way that isn't, putting ourselves into a bubble and denying the suffering that's going on, even within our own souls, within our homes, certainly within the wider world. For those of us, I think if you're on this call, you're among the privileged folk on this planet who are not in a desperate life or death struggle. And so what is our way to serve? And our capacity to serve is also dependent upon our capacity to live fully, and that includes celebration. And so we're here to do both, and it'll be an alternating rhythm of some pre-planned pieces that focus primarily on the struggles and the violence in the Middle East, the terrible conflict there, and then an invitation to all of you as participants, all of us, to share a story, a short story, about 3 minutes, 2-3 minutes, of something that you want to celebrate, that you experienced during Now What? That was a gift, perhaps, of your time in this gathering.
So that's the invitation. It's the art of weaving. And I would love to invite my dear friend, Rabbi Moshe Giventhal. I suggested a Kaddish, but Moish, whatever resonates with you. Moish is joining us by phone from a prison where he serves as a spiritual counselor, which seems profoundly appropriate to me.
And do we have an image we're going to share on the screen while we hear this? Or?
I don't have an image. I didn't have time to create an image, but it would be wonderful if I think we can just listen to Moish. Yeah.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm going to share just a few words about my context in this very moment, which is, like Stephanie said, sitting in a prison. Not because I'm locked up, but because this is where I serve. Outside of Detroit, Michigan. And just before this call, I had a conversation with a Native American man sharing the experience of his father being murdered when he was little. And then I walked into my office and I have in front of me a report, a set of stories from Breaking the Silence, which is an organization of Israeli soldiers or former Israeli soldiers speaking out about the things that they've had to be involved in that were not just about defense, to put it lightly. It's a resource I highly recommend. Their website is breakingthesilence.org.il. So with that, I'm going to share a prayer, traditional Jewish prayer to support souls as they transition from this world to the next. The Kaddish, this became Jewish tradition to recite in the 13th century, 700 years ago, during the time of the murders of the Christian Crusades. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba. V'yalma dibra hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayachon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'lamol me'al maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'rihu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'marmav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May God have mercy and compassion on all the souls and all the families in their journeys to peace. And the following are my own words. Dear God, Spirit, Source, Mystery of Mysteries, Rock of Ages, help us today and every day to remember that every human being is a spark of the divine. Bring close to our hearts the teaching shared by Muslim and Jewish traditions that when we lose a life, it is like losing an entire world. Dear God, help us to understand that this war between Israelis and Palestinians imprisons both people and arises in response to both of their histories of trauma. Help us to remember that as they stumble and err, as their leaders inflict terror, that their violence is not just a response to yesterday's horror, but to centuries or millennia of oppression and colonization at the hands of many other peoples. Help us, therefore, to respond with ever-deepening compassion instead of condemnation of any soul involved. Dear Spirit, help us to remember that this conflict also arises from an even more ancient spiral of war by many peoples fighting over this sliver of land, a trade route between Africa and Europe for at least the last 3,000 years. Help us, therefore, to reject any ideas that there are simple solutions at hand, and instead bow our heads before the scale of what is required. Source of all life, when we despair, Help us to stand shoulder to shoulder with Palestinians and Israelis, parents who have lost children to these wars and yet still get up in the morning, opening their hearts to one another in friendship for the sake of peace. Rock of Ages. Before we ask either peoples for sacrifices or compromises in the face of war and the threat of death, let us begin with the courage to risk our own lives for the sake of healing, for the sake of relationships, and for the sake of peace. And let us begin today and in our own homes. Mystery of mysteries. Let our work and prayers for peace always begin and end with humility. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Moshe.
Thank you so much. This resonates deeply with what's been happening for me as I bring this question of how to end violence, how to bring peace and unity into my own personal life, into my family. And so now we will move to hearing from those of you who are here. And Ben, can I ask you to be the timekeeper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll set a timer for 2.5 minutes. So we hear two people in each two and a half. You can go on, try to keep it to 3. So if the timer goes off, then just it's a sign to wrap up. If you finish sooner, maybe we hear a couple more people, but we're looking for, whatever is on your heart, but in particular, acknowledging that this is the closing ceremony of Now What? And so we want to recognize gifts and celebrate, even as we acknowledge that our work as we end one thing is certainly continuing in many other ways.
So who would like to begin the weaving? Teach us how to weave these threads together to go from this place of deep mourning and humility to a place of celebration. How do we do that? I'm looking for a mentor.
I'm happy to share a quick moment that happened.
We're not hearing you, Suzanne. I know something's going on with your audio, so we'll go to Vicky first. Oh, there you
sorry.
go. I think Suzanne was just starting to speak. Let's try now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. I just want to share that every day that I come to Now What, and I hear the people who are resonating and feeding back in their own way the things that I value most about life, and the compassion that the people who come here feel about all of life is a gift. And every time we get to a closing ceremony, I always feel grateful, happy, and a little sad that, it's, it's the closing ceremony. So celebrating and mourning a little at the same time.
Someone else? Vicky?
Yes, I was just going to head up apart from the amazing conversations every day, there are 2 moments, and they are both here this evening or this afternoon, wherever you are. where there was a realization that we could be on completely opposite, possibly were on opposite sides of the thought spectrum. But instead of that being adversarial or a problem, it instantly became a gift. Instantly became a gift, and that was my celebration, particularly amongst all the others over the last 6 weeks. So thank you. You know who you are.
You don't want to say any more about those moments? Or?
If there's
It's fine.
the gift was in the, it didn't matter really what the stories were. The gifts were that we came from completely opposite sides, but we found joy and harmony in that. I believe. I hope the other person did too.
Well, maybe we'll move to your poem, Stephanie. We'll have time for another round of these shares, and we will be in breakouts at the end as well for more small group conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to share this poem that became itself really as a way of recognizing my personal experience of horror and betrayal, feelings of hopelessness in the face of what's happening in the Middle East, and recognizing, as Moish said, the thousands of years of trying to dig ourselves out of this hole of violence and being brought back to the violence in my own family and the awareness of the violence that I felt when people tried to pretend it wasn't happening. The denial of the violence became another form of violence. And that awareness really blossomed into this poem. And I do want to weave this with my deep sense of appreciation for Now What, and the bounty, the abundant bounty of fulfillment that I have felt in my ideas sequencing through in Now What. And I'll share more about that at another time, but I'm trying to be my own mentor here and weave the two together. So the poem is called Justice, and the title came before I wrote the poem. And the poem emerged in ways that really surprised me. My grandmother's voice was coated with the mucosa of unrelenting grief and rage. Every syllable a pistol firing at what was not and what should have been. The edge of her fury was a cleaver raised above the heads of her grandchildren, assembled in her kitchen for food. In the thick cement forest of a land where no one could say her name, my grandmother spewed the distortions of entrapment, her voice mired in the sandscape of everything that had been and everything that had disappeared. Agony upon agony was passed like plates of rotten food from one grandchild to the next, and we were forced to eat. And we were forced to eat. These inheritances begat violence. There is no way to digest revenge. It must become vomit, the retching drowning out all other sounds. My grandfather watched and made himself invisible, cultivating his awareness until he was almost completely forgotten. Cloaked in his outsized silence, he remained a witness until he was blown away like dust, taking with him the rare secret of his peace. I call him forward now, out of the mists of silent men, the ones who come to know but do not speak. That time was not right. No one would listen. They found the place between, the breath that comes back to you, the ah of realization. Say it now, Grandpa. You, the tailor, can mend the torn fabric of this tribe. You, the tailor, Grandpa, can mend the torn fabric of this tribe. Say it. The whole world is waiting to be freed, Grandpa, from this repetition. The unwanted child, her skin frayed from the strappings, her eyes blinded by hopelessness. Say it to her now. Tell her of the redemption. Tell her of our love for one another.
Thank you, Stephanie. We set aside a little time for each of us, Stephanie and myself, to tell a bit of a story of our now what experience and maybe connecting, to what's happening in the wider world. So it's my turn first. And I come from a very assimilated Jewish family. My great-grandfather came here as a child in the early 1900s, made a lot of money in New York, and his kids gave a lot of that money to Israel. Hospitals and other things. I think I might have been actually the first male inductee into Hadassah. It might be possible. So I grew up in a very privileged space. My first marriage was to a woman who was the child of a Holocaust survivor who fled as a young girl while all of her family was slaughtered, and the trauma that she experienced passed on to my wife and to our two daughters. And so I think about that in this moment and in this work that I've taken on with Now What, which is supported by that money that my great-grandfather made in part. Also supported, though, by the hard work of my second wife, who is half Syrian, Lebanese, Christian, but certainly grew up, her father spoke Arabic. And when we married, I heard that her version of what had happened when Israel was formed was not the same as the story I knew. I read Exodus and thought that was truth, not a novel. So I did a little research and I learned about the Nakba, the devastating experience of the Palestinians evicted from their land, where I thought they were invited to stay and become Israelis if they wanted, and left by choice. So I take all that into now what, and to the sense that we're in this time of great unraveling and breakdown, and a need for transformation, and that much is emerging that is transformational, and that somehow, our capacity again to experience joy, to celebrate, to find the humanity in all of us, even those of us who are inflicting great harm, is essential, and to see it all as one system, all different facets of what the human superorganism embedded in the larger one of Gaia is experiencing. And in this edition, that's come to me in a couple of ways. I've been listening throughout it to a podcast that Vicki Robin has been doing called What Could Possibly Go Right? And I'm thinking in particular of an episode where she interviewed a Hong Kong activist named Glacier Kwong, who had fled in exile to Germany. All of her colleagues were in jail. Her efforts, their efforts to bring democracy to Hong Kong, pretty much in tatters. And her story was, we don't persevere because we have hope. We have hope because we persevere. And she spoke about, her need to find joy and to celebrate, even with the great weight that she carries. It was quite profound to hear that. And the other thing that really stands out around this theme was in a field trip to the Reworlding gathering yesterday, and it pains me that Dita is not with us for either of these gatherings. She's busy putting on that amazing week-long event, and so certainly I understand her need to tend to that. But she and Ava brought some beautiful work into the Now What space, and there was a session with Vanessa Andreotti of Gesturing Towards Decolonial Futures, who's been very influential, going back to the last edition of Now What too. And what came out of that for me was a whole new understanding of this idea of what it means to hospice the old ways, the old paradigm, while we midwife the new. And I realized, although I'd used that phrase for a long time, learned it from the Berkana Institute's Two Loops model, some of you may know that I didn't take it very seriously, the notion of hospicing. In reality, my attitude was, I want to kill the damn thing. This industrial growth economy, this war economy, as Jody Evans, another wonderful interviewee in Vicki Robin's podcast, calls it. I just want it to die, and I want to be its executioner if I can. That's been my attitude. And hospicing, of course, is not that, right? It's giving it a good death. It's having compassion for it and encouraging it to let go, right? It's time to let go. And that's, intellectually, I've told myself that that's what we need to do in Now What. And Suzanne, you named that so beautifully, and Vicki, that the idea of this being a space of reconciliation and healing. And so the last thing, what I feel really inclined to celebrate now, is this sense that as we move out of this edition and begin our work towards the next one, that we're at a point where we're ready to really offer real healing to the wider world. That we focused on building ourselves up as a community and creating a space a container that's strong enough to hold the experiences you had, Vicki. And that might not have been true, even 6 months ago, but I sense that it is now, and that in many, many ways now, offerings for the wider world have been seeded in this edition, and in the next one will really be blossoming and growing and perhaps bearing fruit. Thank you. I think we're over to Uri now. Wait, I don't. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry, I'm scribing. So just, I moved to my tablet, so I double tasking on it and scribing some of the words. And I wanted to put something like a political message. I just came out of a call with a colleague from Palestine, the Theater of the Oppressed director there. And she kind of called out on our community to scold us a little bit, but a good scolding. So as I'm sharing this video, which is part of my life story, and I feel it's a work in process, I prefer work in process than work in progress now. What I want to be very clear is that I made this drawing. This is Free Our Souls. And it has this little land as we were talking and Iman was speaking. And I was born in Israel, in the Galilee, near the Sea of Galilee. My family came from different places in Europe, different stories that I would not go into right now. But I felt I was served in the army. I grew up to serve in the army. That's kind of how it feels a little bit. You grow up to serve the army. That's kind of how it is growing up in Israel. It seems like that's your purpose in life, in a way. And I served in Gaza. I was a tunnel rat. And yeah, the video kind of shares some of that. And when I came out, I was very angry. I'm still very angry. And I was angry not with the Palestinians. I was angry with my father and my mother and my sisters and everyone that I felt were responsible of me being in that situation and putting me in that situation of being on the throat of other people and then getting the ricochet of that on all different layers of that ricochet. And I don't want to be angry anymore. And I don't want to be afraid as well. So here's the thing. I don't want to be afraid and I don't want to be angry. And the army made me who I am. I had a beautiful, peaceful experience in the tunnels of being one with the earth. That's a weird place to be one with the earth, but maybe it's not so weird. But yeah, I'm thankful for Nawat, although I almost did not participate in anything. I somehow got called to share something, and I did share these parts of this video in Coming Down to Earth, which is, yeah, and I usually share it as a process because I feel it should be part of a process, but now I feel the ceremony is maybe the process. So thank you for this ceremony. And I don't know what else to say beside thank you, and I hope that we could free our souls. Men were raised to fight, denied of their inner light, sacrificing themselves for tribal pride.
It's not your community. You are not Palestinian.
The world is my community.
The people was key for your responsibility. People don't choose.
He is letting go of the archaic conditioning, the compelling need to be right. He is returning to his core, trading his armor for a flower. Warrior at heart, champion of humanity, he rises again. דשא גבוה. אני זוחל. ברקע נשמעים ציפורים ורוח בענפי העצים. אני אינני שומע את הקולות. לראשי רצים סיפורים, דמיונות. מעל הכל הימום מתמשך. אהיה אתה הגיבור, אהיה אתה הגיבור. אני מתרומם מהעשב ומסיר את קשת הפלסטיק מגבי. חץ הגומי מופנה כלפי קיר לבן וגבשושי. תל אביב בשעות אחר הצהריים מוקדמות. אני עומד בחנות שמלות, מאחוריי אמי ואחותי מסתכלות ומודדות סמלה. עד עתה הנסיעות לתל אביב תמיד לוו בריגוש של קניית צעצוע מלחמתי חדש בחנות. הפעם כבר לא היינו בחנות. עוד מעט אהיה בן 13. אני מביט לעבר החלון הפונה לרחוב. אור כתום. פיצוץ. שקט.
The silence is so intense that it seems everybody have stopped breathing. 1, 2, 3. Can't believe it's happening, my sister calls out loud. 4, 5, 6. A woman enters the shop, shaking with all her body. It seems like she's not physically injured, but she's hysterical. My mother tries to calm her down. I'm silent. 7, 8, 9. A chorus of sirens break the silence. My sister takes me and my mother by the hand. She takes us out of the shop and along the broken glass-covered road, away from the center of the explosion. I don't look back. I'm silent.
The terrorist attack today in Tel Aviv, which killed at least 13 people and injured dozens more. Israeli officials say the suicide bomber had targeted a crowded new shopping mall, filled today with children in costumes, celebrating the Jewish holiday of Purim.
I don't remember the first 48 hours of my recruitment. It's all blacked out. I wake up rolling on the rocky desert ground. The sound of yelling commandos turn and mix in my mind. How did I get there? I ask myself. The question floated in the back of my head. From here the memory becomes a sequence of images, long hours of anticipation, watching a landscape in black and green, long walks on sandy grounds between smashed houses, a house with a pink plastic mirror, a dark hole in the ground, a water tank, slowly pouring to the ground, a young boy tied and blindfolded with a striped fabric, a loaded gun, finger on trigger. An armored window breaks into a web of crack. Did I understand where I was? What am I doing? What are we doing? My head was filled with the story that brought me there. We are defending the house.
אני חושב שהסיבה שאני מעיד לשוברים שתיקה, ואני חושב שזה משהו שאני מעוניין לשים את עצמי במקום הזה, זה שתהליך שמבחינתי התחיל בצבא, אבל היו לו הרבה שלבים אחר כך שבהם הבנתי שהדברים האלה שחשבתי שאני עושה אותם כשליחות, כאל משהו שזה האחריות האזרחית שלי והאחריות שלי למשפחה שלי והאחריות שלי לחברה שלי לעשות אותם, הם דברים שהשתתפו בהרס חיים, ביצירת הרס לאנשים אחרים.
What voices are you hearing? What is it that you want? What are you saying?
I'm doing this because I love you. And I remember you. I'm afraid for your life. And your freedom.
What do you want?
I want to be seen. I want to and free myself from the past. לא היו הדברים מעולם, אולי מעולם לא השכמתי עם שחר לגן, לעודו בזעת אפיי. מעולם בימים ארוכים, בימים ארוכים, ביוקדים של קציר, במרומי עגלה מושת עלות, לא פצעתי קולי שיר. מעולם לא צורתי בצלם שותה ובצום שמנהרת שלי, אוי כנרת שלי. יאיר או חלם
Thank you, Uri. So we have time for more sharing from anyone who wishes to speak now. A couple more voices. Gifts that you've received during Now What, or other reflections. Akiko?
I met some of you in the summer last year at Coming Down to Earth, and also Now What last edition. And why I joined coming down to earth was that I had a conflict in my own body, and I wanted to know why this is happening. And during the last one, I got so much encouragement from you all. And then this time, I really got a gift from many of you that you all helped me to cry, which I haven't been able to do it so many years. And people here now what have been so kind and warm and really accepted who I am, and I'm very very happy about that you all helped me to be able to cry, which is a wonderful feeling. And things happen during this edition, and you all here and supported me. So I just express my appreciation to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akiko, for your amazing gifts to this gathering.
I'd like to express some appreciation for the collaborations that happen in Now What. And it's a remarkable meeting of souls and spirits and minds and hearts. And I wanted to especially acknowledge how grateful I am for the collaboration I've been sharing with Claire Hedin. And this might be a good segue because Claire will be sharing a song after this. But I wanted to let Claire and everyone know the gift that Claire has given to me of an awareness of sound that it's really impossible for me to describe how this is reverberating through my understanding of the nervous system, through my understanding of my own history. The poem that I read is very influenced by Claire's contribution to my awareness of that sensory experience of voices and sounds. And I feel also that Claire has really transmitted to me her own wisdom in a way that she shares generously and prolifically. It just flows out of her. And I feel it is a gift of Now What, that it gives us these spaces so that we can have these kinds of contacts with people who really change the shape of our inner world and our outer expression. So I wanted to express that appreciation to you, Claire, as a friend, as a woman, as a colleague, as a student. And thank you for the beautiful, beautiful collaboration that I hope will last a very long time. And hopefully this is a good segue to your offering as well.
It's hard to find words in all of this. There's so much feeling and sensing. I'm kind of more and more blown away and humbled by the serendipity of how life weaves us into each other's fabric, each other's tapestry, in ways that we don't even understand until surprising coincidences become apparent. So for me, one of those in today is the fact that in 2019, I started creating a CD. I started visioning a CD called Singing the World to Peace. It was directly offered to Gaza, Palestine, and Israel. And I couldn't understand why on earth it would take this long to still be in post-production. And I didn't realize that this ceremony today was going to have such a poignant, earthy, and beautiful gravitas around this theme. So I'm very humbled by the serendipity and by the invitation to share myself and what I am allowed to create. So I'm going to play it for you. There's a short invocation and then a piece. There are ultimately 3 pieces in the CD. I'm playing you the first one, and it's not ever been played in a public environment before. So that is, I don't know, I can't think of a more appropriate place for it to be invited into. Okay. And I'm not showing an image. I invite you to just go into the soundscape. I don't want any other distractions. For the people of Israel and Palestine and Gaza, and for all the troubles around the world, may this music and this intention help with healing. it means a lot to me to be able to share that with you. I feel like it initiates the journey of the healing journey for this CD. And I want to also thank you, Stephanie, as well as Now What in general, but in the collaboration that I'm doing with you, Stephanie, I am thriving. The beauty of Now What is it helps us thrive. It helps us identify our gifts. It supports us in exploring our gifts and sharing them. So I resonate with what you said, Ben, earlier about building a container that can then invite people to leave the nest and to bring something of the love that we discover here. Love for self, love for each other, love for the planet, and to share it with the support of Now What, always in existence. It's not an event. It's a recognition of what we each have to give. And Uri, I've learned so much from you, and especially watching that film and just the language of movement, the language of pain, the language of yearning, the longing for us to get past separation. I'm altered by this ceremony, and I thank you for this opportunity to become human over and over again in a time of crisis and of love rising and welling up through each of us in its own unique ways, including Akiko's beautiful tears. Namaste. Much love.
Thank you, Claire. Wow. I'm mindful of the time, Stephanie. I know you were going to share a story. We were hoping to do breakouts, which we clearly won't do, but it would be great if we could hear at least one or two other voices before Vicky's song as well. So do you think we can manage all that?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Right.
Sounds like a good redesign, Ben.
You're up.
Can I speak? I am going to miss these, and I look forward to the next iteration of these. This whole thing has become a sustaining meeting for me. It gives me hope, and I hear other people's messages of some of their struggles, and I go, well, I can do it too then, and we can persevere together. So, yeah, these have been wonderful for me, and I thank Ben for inviting me. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Don.
An honor to what an honor to close this such beautiful circle ceremony. Thank you, everybody. I had an idea to sing one song, and Stephanie brought me round to the one I'm going to sing, which is very under-rehearsed, but I feel its truth will come out. Some of you know it. It is in my play. It was Claire spoke of the long game. Well, this was written in 2005, so it's waited 15 years to 16 years to be in the public domain, really. It was written as a sister song with my Sulcha song, which is inspired by the Sulcha project about reconciliation, and it was particularly inspired after a race murder in the UK, when the mother of the child who was killed spoke on television and said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And to hear that for real rather than just from a scripture felt hugely powerful and heartbreaking. So this is called Forgiving. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. It's beautiful. When the stream becomes It's not an easy thing to say. If you forgive me, then we both can find a way. It's a universal chime crying for the time for forgiving. There are those who find deep within their hearts a rosebud opening, and that's just the start. We're brothers and sisters, and we all are one. If you fight, you're reaching for the gun. Raise your hands up for peace. Reach for the sun. Reach for the sun. Reach for the sun. Reach for the sun.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, everyone. It's been
Thank you, everyone. Yes. I feel this entire gathering is a prayer, and I feel it wafting its way to the world, and particularly to the Middle East. I can feel it manifesting its worth, its merit. And I express my celebratory gratitude to Nawat for creating a platform in which such praying is possible. Thank you, everyone.